15 games in these conference semifinals in the NBA playoffs 2017. 14 of those games decided by double digits. 14 of 15. And yet now we are pretty much down to two series that really are in question at all. And two of those series, well, one of them wrapped up today, and one of them the other of those two that are not very competitive are gonna be ending here soon. Probably, maybe tomorrow night, maybe maybe game 5 for the Warriors as they play the Utah Jazz. So those numbers are pretty incredible. You want to be honest. 14 of 15 games decided by double digits. I'll say that number again. However, two of those series, we're looking at best 2 out of 3s. The San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets, the Washington Wizards and the Boston Celtics. Both those series are tied at 2 apiece. The Houston Rockets handling their business against the Spurs tonight in Houston. The Wizards handling their business at home against the Boston Celtics. Let's talk about it. This is Kerry Wood, Mr. Sports and Swag, sportsandswag.com. Man, you know it's another edition of the Sports and Swag podcast. We're going to break this thing down a little bit tonight for what we saw today in the NBA Finals. I'm sorry, in the NBA Conference Semifinals. I'm jumping ahead about 2 months. We're about 2 months away from the final. I'm sorry, about a month away. Very interesting, man. Very, very interesting day of basketball. But, man, the blowouts all over the place, which is really, it's remarkable. But I mean, we've kind of gotten used to that in NBA playoff action. We've kind of gotten used to that. It's not anything really new. We've seen those teams really, especially on the Spurs series against the Rockets. We saw them just get throttled game 1, and then they come back. Really, it was a close game to that fourth quarter, and Houston fell apart, and it ended up being a Spurs blowout. And then we've seen it in the Boston-Washington series, with Washington coming back and winning in impressive fashion here the last 2 nights in D.C. Very interesting, man. Very interesting. Well, let's get into this thing. Let's talk about these games. We'll start with this Houston Rockets game. This is the game that we just finished watching here a little while ago on TNT. The Rockets coming back after blowing a golden opportunity to take real control of that series the other night. With Tony Parker being out, Spurs kind of trying to find their way with, a guy that, DeJounte Murray, the guy that hadn't played a whole lot, a rookie, in a playoff setting like that, and the Rockets couldn't take advantage of it. They did not take advantage of it. But they came back strong tonight. Give them credit. Led by James Harden. James Harden is 28 points, 12 assists. Harden came back really strong. Whenever he's able to get those assist numbers up, it's always going to be huge for the Rockets. I mean, that's usually the key for him, But of course, for him to get those assist numbers, the guys on the other end, they've got to be hitting those shots. That is the factor, and that's what did not happen Friday night. It did happen tonight. As you look at Ryan Anderson scoring 13 points, and he's a starter, but his scoring 13 and Lou Williams coming off the bench for 13 points. Lou Williams had a terrible game Friday night. Didn't even score. He comes back and has 13. So that's 26 points between those two guys. And then Eric Gordon, man, with Nene getting injured, and that's one thing we need to talk about. Nene being injured for the Houston Rockets is man, thought was going to be a huge factor in this game. It turned out not to be. Could be a huge factor as we get down in these last 3 games of this series, though. I mean, the Spurs already had a humongous advantage when you look inside with Pau Gasol, you look inside with LaMarcus Aldridge, those guys playing against that smaller team in the Rockets. For them to come out and really not make that a factor tonight was pretty interesting. But Gordon who usually comes off the bench, came out as, starting as D'Antoni kind of went small to start that third quarter. Thought that was huge. Gordon went off. He took full advantage of that. And, man, they never looked back. They turned what was a 4-point game at the half into pretty much about a 15-point lead at the end of the third quarter, and the Spurs were never able to recover from that. They got as high as 25 or 26 points, somewhere in that range. And, man, Pop called off the dogs, man, about midway through that fourth quarter. He waved that white flag. And they say let's go on and get ready to go back to San Antonio and see what we can do in Game 5. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all for not bringing his guys back in, especially Kawhi. I mean, as hard as he works on the offensive end, when you're he's got to be your enforcer. You got to be your main man on defense. You can't expect him to do that on defense and then come back and, do it all on offense. You can't expect that. A lot to ask for him. A lot to ask of him, no doubt. No doubt on an every night basis. Anyway, LaMarcus Aldridge was a bright spot for the Spurs. He did come up, had 16 points, but this is the thing about the Spurs. He had 16 points. He probably could have had 30 in the time that he played. I mean, when the name went out of the game, Clint Capella had drawn his third foul early in that second quarter. So the Rockets had played basically was Ryan Anderson playing center. Now let's get back to Ryan Anderson just really quick. With Gordon coming in at the start of the third quarter, that pretty much had Ryan Anderson on the bench. Well, there's a reason. I mean, Ryan Anderson basically became the Rockets' backup center. Now he's 6'10", but he doesn't play 6'10". If you sit there and watch this game, you sit there and watch Ryan Anderson play, he plays smaller than that because he does his best work on the perimeter, at least offensively anyway. He's not a great rebounder or anything. He's not going to block many people's shots. So getting back to Aldridge took advantage of that finally. Had 16 points and it really got a lot of those in the second quarter. Third quarter, especially going later into that third quarter and then going into the fourth, it's like the Spurs kind of went away from that. I mean, even with Nene in the game, even with Nene healthy, Nene can't really guard Marcus Aldridge when he's right. The Spurs, for them not to punish Houston inside with Gasol and Aldridge from start to finish is a little bit questionable, man. The Spurs, I think, kind of deviated from the game plan just a little bit. Maybe a lot, maybe more than a little bit, maybe a lot. A lot of quick shots, a lot of threes going up in there, including Kawhi shooting quick into the shot clock. The formula Friday night was to shoot late in the shot clock. The formula Friday night was to get the ball down inside to Aldridge, who had 25, 26 points or whatever it was Friday night. That was the game plan. They kind of deviated from that and they paid for it. Now, that's not to say the Rockets didn't do what they needed to do. The Rockets' energy, we talked about mental toughness Friday night. The mental toughness kind of showed up for the Rockets tonight, at least energy-wise. I mean, they were, the energy was very evident from the start. They did what they had to do. They took more of what the defense gave them, a lot more than they did Friday night. And then once they started driving it to the hoop, then those three-pointers started opening up. I mean, it's pretty simple. Even though, again, probably the game plan for the Spurs was to chase the Rockets off of that three-point line. You know, it's kind of an instinct. You know, the team starts, just coming down on you and murdering you inside with layup after layup. You're gonna automatically think, okay, look, we got to stop this. Man, we got to do what we got to do to stop these guys getting it to the hoop, getting it to the rim. And when you do that, then you open up the threes. The Spurs' game plan is to stay at home on those three-point shooters. In that third quarter, late in that third quarter, into that fourth quarter, the Spurs didn't do that. Game over. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Again, like the threes were just raining from the Rockets. 19 of 43. I think that we're gonna make that our stat of the game. 19 for 43. 19 for 43 is incredible. Almost 50% if you count it. If you look at it like that. Just unbelievable shooting from the Houston Rockets, and that was pretty much the difference in this game. It's going to be interesting, though, see how things go with Nene's injury here, coming up in game number 5 in San Antonio. How does it change? I mean, does he play, first of all? That groin injury, that's what he's diagnosed with. He went out of the game early in that second quarter. Telling you, man, groin injuries are one of those injuries that are hard to kind of heal on quickly, especially in a series when you kind of turn around and playing every other day. It's going to be interesting. The Spurs murdered the Rockets when they kind of put their mind to it inside. Offensive rebounds galore. With Marcus Aldridge killing whoever guarded him inside. It's going to be interesting. But if those Rockets can get those threes to fall, it's going to be hard to beat them. See what happens, man. See what happens. It's going to be very interesting. Game 5 coming up Tuesday night in San Antonio. Very interesting. So, again, that series tied at 2. We'll see how things go, man. I mean, cannot wait for Game 5 Tuesday night. Cannot wait. Can the Rockets take what they did tonight? Can they take it on the road? Maybe, kind of duplicate what they did Monday night. We'll see. We'll see. Let's move on, man. Moving on to the Wizards and the Celtics. Boston Celtics and the Wizards. Another blowout there in D.C. Man, you're talking about getting up off the mat. The Washington Wizards have done what they needed to do after blowing double-digit leads galore. Double-digit leads galore in Boston, and they have really taken it to the Celtics. They're really taking it to them, let's be honest. Celtics really started this game very well as opposed to Friday when the game was pretty much a blowout from the jump. You got to give them credit for that, but not much after that, let's be perfectly honest with you. Not much after that. John Wall had another huge game, 27 points, 12 assists, 5 huge steals. Bradley Beal with 29 points. And you look at the wing players, man, Morris on the outside. Otto Porter with 18. Morris with 16. Huge points. Again, of course, now that wing, at least off the bench, the small forward position was a little bit empty with Kelly Oubre not playing. And that was interesting. talk about Kelly Oubre for just a second before we kind of break this game down just a little bit. Kelly Oubre was suspended for tonight's game for that push, that MMA move, UFC, whatever you want to call it, on Kelly Olynyk in Game 3. Look, him being kicked out of the game, getting the ejection that night was warranted, but being suspended, man, come on, it's the playoffs. It is the playoffs. I didn't necessarily like the way he reacted to that hard screen by Olynyk, but to suspend him for this game tonight, I didn't like that. Didn't understand it. Nonetheless, it didn't matter. The Wizards did what they had to do. Again, like I said, they got the rounded out scoring that they need, that they pretty much used pretty much every game. They just didn't finish in Boston. They have done so in Washington. And we talked about this Friday night again. I picked the Celtics to win this series in 7 games. And basically it's going to come down to who can finish. And Boston proved that they could at home, and would turn out to be 2 pretty close games. Well, Game 1 wasn't close at the end, but it was close for a good while in that game. And then, of course, Game 2 was the overtime thriller that the Celtics pulled out. So Boston has proven, Washington, still has not proven that they can finish a game. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, Game 5 is going to be unbelievable. That's going to go down Wednesday night in Boston. Game 5, we know the history with Game 5s. Game 5s just decide the series so often. We'll see what happens with that, man. I'm excited to see what happens. Kind of looking a little bit deeper into that game, the third quarter. The third quarter, 42-20 uprising by the Wizards. After the game was tied at 48 at halftime, the Wizards come out and just light it up. Boston turning the ball over, just completely just screwing the whole thing up in the third quarter. Brad Stevens, maybe the quote of the game, he was like, the turnover is kind of going to kill you, especially against a team like Washington that loves to get it up and down the floor, that knows how to finish it off when they get the ball out in the full court, and when they get it out on the break. He's like, man, it's probably just better to just, when we turn it over, just kick the ball into the stands. At least at that point, we can set our defense up. And, I can't argue with him. I don't know if you can get the ball into that position where you can just go and kick it or whatever. I don't know, but I have to agree. I mean, when you look at it, those turnovers in that third quarter, and with the Wizards doing what they had to do, finishing those plays off, was the difference in this game. I mean, it turned a tie game at halftime into a 22-point lead at the end of 3. And look, the game was over at that point. The game was over. Stat of the game, let's look no further than Isaiah Thomas. 17 points to start that basketball game in the first 15 minutes. First quarter, in nearly a half of the game, he had 17 points. The rest of the game, 2. 2 points the rest of the game to finish with 19. It's not going to get it done, man. I mean, bruh, really? I mean, let's not get on Isaiah Thomas. This is not to get on him. We know what he's been through. We know what he's been through mentally, physically. Man, Celtics have got to be able to help him a little bit more. The Wizards are going to be keying in. Whoever plays the Celtics are going to be keying in on him because, look, I mean, there's not many other people on that roster that really scare you. not many other players that are going to make plays for themselves or make plays for others. So when it comes down to that, somebody's got to step up, man. And the Celtics didn't do it, but again, Game 5 is in Boston. They get that one. No matter what happens, Game 6 in Washington. Game 7 will be right back at the Garden, man. Right back at the Garden in Boston. So, again, best 2 out of 3. I mean, this is what the playoffs are about. This is what it's about. We've had blowouts, but again, we've gotten it down. We've gotten through 4 games, and it's best 2 out of 3 now. Best 2 out of 3, and you gotta love it when it's like that. Got to. So, again, like I said, I've got the Celtics winning this game, winning the series in 7. I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with it until the Wizards prove they can win in Boston. Who knows? That'll probably be Wednesday night. It'll probably be Wednesday night, man. Who knows? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, it's going to be about them finishing. And that mental toughness I talked about Friday night, that mental toughness. They showed it at home, but can they show it on the road? They can, it's going to be hard for Boston to win because, you see the Wizards are the more talented team. It's not that hard to see. It's pretty obvious. So, anyway, that series tied at 2. Game 5 Wednesday night, man. Looking at the other games, but first, before we talk about the Cleveland game, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Patrick Beverley losing his grandfather before the game tonight against San Antonio. Man, another NBA player or someone related to the NBA losing a loved one in these playoffs. We saw it with Isaiah Thomas, and then we saw it with the Jet, man. Kenny Smith for TNT losing his mother last week. And now it's Patrick Beverley losing his grandfather. But I just want to say all my condolences, thoughts, and prayers out to Patrick Beverley and his family. Man, just kind of looking at him in the press conference there, man. The emotions really just unbelievable for him. You saw him hit that 3, and it looked like he was still crying. Start that basketball game tonight. Just unbelievable stuff, man. For him and Isaiah to fight through what they fought through and play at a high level is incredible. So again, prayers go out to him and his family. And let's kind of move on and look at this Cleveland series. Again, they sweep the Raptors. Kyle Korver, look, not much else to look at. I mean, at least the Raptors did fight in this game. They actually led early, got down, then fought back. So give them credit for that. But in the end, it's the Cavs moving on, as we all thought. I thought the Raptors would win a game or 2. They didn't. Well. Hey, look. Doesn't matter. The Cavs going to get their rest. Kyle Korver really stuck out, man. 18 points. The Raptors leaving him wide open for threes. It's not a good combination. LeBron did his thing, 35 points. Kyrie, 27. Yeah, another day, another blow, another day, another W for the Cavaliers, for the defending champs. So they get more rest as they do another sweep. That's 11 games in a row that they won in the playoffs, dating back to last year's finals, where of course they won 3 in a row against the Golden State Warriors. So again, a lot of rest for the Cavs, man. A lot of rest. It's gonna be interesting whoever gets to play them. I don't know if they're gonna have the legs. I don't know, man. But anyway, the Cavs move on. Now, what about the Raptors? Free agents galore. We look at Ibaka, PJ Tucker. These are the guys that they got at the trade deadline. What are they going to do with them? Are they going to pay all these guys? You know, what about Dwayne Casey? What's the deal with him? I mean, not trying to get anybody to lose their job or anything like that, but you have to start asking questions in Toronto. What is the deal? What do we have to do to get better? What do we have to do to move on in the playoffs? I don't know. A lot of soul searching, a lot of questions need to be answered, but despite who the coach is, I mean, what is the roster going to look like? You have to ask yourself that question. I mean, can the Raptors afford to pay all these guys? I don't know. I would doubt it, to be quite honest with you. I would absolutely doubt it. It's going to be very interesting there north of the border. Man, we the North, that's the battle cry. We the North are going to have to figure some things out. Pretty simple, man. Look, again, one thing that's pretty simple is sports and swag. We're going to be here. We're going to cover this whole thing. These NBA playoffs are starting to get very interesting. We got 2 series, best 2 out of 3. Can't beat it. Again, we're going to be here more than likely after Tuesday night, after the Spurs Rockets series. See what happens in that. We'll be right back here. Talk about these playoffs. Hopefully you're going to come back and you're going to listen to it with us, man. We're going to break it down. We'll talk about, of course, the Wizards and the Boston Celtics on Wednesday night. Again, I'm Kerry Wood, a.k.a. Mr. Sports and Swag. Check me out on Google+, Twitter, very simple, at Sports and Swag. Or I have a personal one as well. That's at Mr._Sports and Swag. Like I said, hit me up on that Facebook page, like it, see what's going on Sports and Swag, and of course visit the website. Again, I'm Kerry Wood, and I'm out.